Hello everyone. Today's story will take you on an emotional journey about motherhood, love, and hope. Diep, a girl raised with love by her adoptive mother, is now faced with an important decision when her adoptive mother, who is aging, wishes for Diep to find her biological mother. In response to this heartfelt wish, Diep decides to seek help from James, her boyfriend. Together with James, she embarks on a journey to trace her roots, armed with nothing but a piece of paper with minimal information. They start their challenging journey, visiting distant villages and meeting people who might have clues about the long-lost mother. Along the way, Diep not only seeks her mother but also discovers herself, realizing the strength within her that she never knew existed. Will Diep be able to find her birth mother after all these years? This touching story will keep you hooked. Subscribe to the channel to follow Diep and James on this incredible journey. Diep grew up in the loving arms of her adoptive mother, a gentle, humble woman who lived simply but was full of compassion. The woman had taken Diep in when she was just an infant, abandoned at the gates of an orphanage. At the time, she worked as a cleaner there, quietly observing the children with no parents and no home. One day, she found baby Diep, so small and fragile, sleeping peacefully in an old cloth. Her heart, having longed for a child of her own, suddenly stirred with fierce emotion. Despite knowing the hardships ahead, she decided to adopt the little girl. From that moment on, she poured all her love into raising Diep, using everything she had to care for her. Life wasn't easy, their small house on the outskirts of town, modest meals, and clothes carefully sewn from old fabric, but it was full of laughter and affection. Diep grew up under her adoptive mother's protection, calling her mom with genuine warmth. She taught Diep the most basic yet important values: kindness, patience, and how to treat others with respect. To her, Diep wasn't just a daughter, she was her entire world. Years passed, and Diep blossomed into a confident young woman. She studied diligently, graduated from university with honors, and landed a job at a major company. Over time, she rose through the ranks, building a stable career. No matter how busy she got, she returned home every weekend to visit her mother, bringing gifts and stories from the city. Seeing her mother's eyes light up with joy made everything worthwhile. To Diep, no one could ever replace the woman who had sacrificed her entire life for her. But time spares no one. Recently, her adoptive mother's health began to decline. She became forgetful, her movements slower, and chronic pain lingered. One quiet afternoon, as the two of them sat on the porch sipping tea, her mother gently took her hand, eyes heavy with emotion, and pulled out a yellowed piece of paper from her pocket. "My daughter," she said with a trembling voice, "it's time you know the truth. This is the information about your biological mother." Diep was stunned. She never expected to hear those words. On the paper was a name and a distant village she had never heard of. Her heart tightened. Her mother confessed that she had kept this secret for decades, not out of fear of losing Diep, but to protect her from growing up with feelings of abandonment or uncertainty. But now, with her health fading, she hoped Diep could find her birth mother if she was still alive. Diep was overwhelmed with emotion. She embraced the woman who had raised her, tears streaming down her face. The love she received from her adoptive mother was more powerful than any bond of blood. Yet she also understood this was not just a revelation, but a heartfelt wish for reunion, a final piece of closure. Clutching the paper tightly, Diep nodded. A new journey was about to begin. Faced with her adoptive mother's heartfelt wish for her to reunite with her biological mother, Diep was deeply moved. Never before had her heart been stirred so profoundly. The piece of paper in her hand trembled slightly with each breath, as if echoing the whirlwind of emotions surging inside her. On it were just a few simple lines, her birth mother's name, an estimated year of birth, and a rural village somewhere in central Vietnam. And yet, it weighed heavily in her hand, not only for the truth it held, but for the overwhelming love and selflessness her adoptive mother had shown. For decades, this woman had kept the secret, raising Diep with unwavering love, never once complaining, never seeking praise. And now, in her frail old age, she was the one urging Diep to find the woman who had given birth to her, offering that gift with a heart full of grace and quiet sorrow. "I just want you to know where you come from," she had said, voice trembling. "If you find her, tell her I hold no anger. I only hope you understand everything, and live a full life." Her words carved themselves into Diep's soul. A wave of gratitude surged within Diep. Without her adoptive mother, she wouldn't be who she was today. Every achievement, every moment of joy she had known, was thanks to this woman's steady, unconditional love. But now, alongside that gratitude, grew a deep curiosity, a yearning to understand the woman who had brought her into this world, someone she had never seen or heard, but whose presence seemed to stir a quiet connection in her heart. Something deep within her began to awaken. She remembered all the times she'd looked into the mirror and wondered, "Who do I resemble?" Or when she would watch mothers and daughters on the street and wonder what it felt like. Though her adoptive mother had filled so many voids, there had always been a quiet, aching space, a question unanswered about her origins, her true identity. Now, with this piece of paper, things were beginning to shift. Diep felt something calling her from far away, perhaps an old house amid quiet fields, perhaps a pair of eyes that had once wept when forced to part with a newborn. She felt no anger toward her birth mother. How could she, when she knew nothing of her, and especially when she imagined what circumstances must have led to such a heartbreaking choice? Maybe her mother had suffered greatly. Maybe she still waited for a miracle. Diep looked up and into her adoptive mother's faded eyes. In them was not only hope, but a profound faith in her. And in that moment, Diep knew she would go. Not only because her mother wanted it, but because she herself needed it. She needed to seek the truth, to search for the missing piece of her life, not to reject the present, but to complete it. With the hope of finding her birth mother, whom she had never met, Diep decided to share her story with James, the man she loved, who was also a busy CEO but always made time for her. Their love was quiet but deep, built on mutual understanding and small gestures that meant the world. James was not one for many words, but he was always present when it mattered. When Diep handed him the old piece of paper, sharing her adoptive mother's final heartfelt wish, he simply held her close, no promises needed, for his eyes said it all. "We'll find your mother," James said softly, his voice steady. "I'm here, with you." They began their journey with only a few fragments of information, a name, a vague village name, and an uncertain birth year. Yet, James showed no hesitation. With his calm nature and quiet resolve, he methodically began planning, reaching out to local authorities, digging through old archives, and traveling with Diep to rural towns in search of any lead. Diep walked beside him every step of the way, not just as someone being helped, but as a partner in a deeply emotional journey. As they traveled, Diep began to realize that this was more than just a search for someone, it was a journey back to herself. Childhood memories flooded her mind, the way she used to search strangers' faces in crowds, the silence she felt whenever someone mentioned real parents, the countless nights she lay awake wondering where she had come from. Now, beside the man she loved, she didn't feel so alone anymore. James, ever so quietly, held her hand whenever she felt lost, providing the strength she needed to keep moving forward. There were days when they nearly reached their breaking point. They traveled through several provinces, met with various people, and listened to dozens of stories that seemed hopeless. Yet, every time Diep felt she wanted to give up, James would encourage her with one simple phrase, "As long as you want to keep going, I'll be with you." That love, a quiet, unspoken, became the greatest support for her during this journey filled with tears. One afternoon, while they were resting in a small town in central Vietnam, an elderly woman, having heard their story, suddenly fell silent. After a long pause, she said, "Over 20 years ago, a young woman left our village in tears, carrying a child. She handed the baby to a stranger and disappeared. I still remember her face." Diep's heart tightened. Each word the woman spoke seemed to fall into place like a puzzle piece. She couldn't be sure, but something inside her sparked a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she was finally close to the truth. James held her hand tightly. His gaze was not just one of empathy, it was a quiet assurance, a promise that no matter where this journey led, he would be with her. "You've come this far," he whispered. "You didn't come all this way to stop now." Diep looked at him, her heart full of gratitude, love, and a deep sense of peace. Perhaps this journey, no matter the outcome, was already a turning point in her life. She hadn't just gone looking for her mother. She had gone looking for herself. And in the process, she had found James, a quiet yet steadfast love, who would walk beside her through the most difficult moments of her life. As they continued their search, Diep began to see this not just as a journey to find a long-lost family member, but as a path to discovering her own strength and identity. The endless hours of traveling, the exhausting days, and the moments of uncertainty only served to highlight the resilience she never knew she had. The road was long, and there were many moments of doubt, but Diep kept pressing on, knowing that with each step, she was not just uncovering her past, but also building her future. James, on the other hand, never faltered. He was her steady anchor, quietly supporting her even when the weight of the search seemed too heavy to bear. In the quiet moments, when they would sit together in the evenings, watching the stars, Diep realized that this journey had already changed her in ways she never expected. She hadn't just found clues to her birth mother, she had discovered what it meant to truly love and be loved in return. It wasn't the destination that mattered most, it was the journey itself, and the person she had become along the way. Finally, after nearly 3 months of relentless searching, a breakthrough came. They found an elderly woman who remembered a young girl who had left the village with a baby years ago, handing the child to a stranger from the city before disappearing. The details aligned too perfectly to ignore. Diep's heart raced as she realized that she might be closer than ever to finding the woman who had given her life. In that moment, James held her tightly. "Whatever happens, you've been incredibly brave," he whispered. "And I'm proud to walk this path with you." Diep rested her head on his chest, tears slipping down her cheeks, not just from the overwhelming emotion, but because she finally knew one thing for sure: she was no longer alone. She had, and would continue, to walk towards the light with 2 mothers in her heart, and a love deep enough to carry her through anything.